Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with Marilyn Morales. Today's episode is brought to you by Izzy's Legacy. We will be showcasing our next fundraiser coming up October 28th in beautiful New Jersey at Little Mills Country Club because we're having a golfing tournament to raise money for those on a cancer journey. I will be putting the link down below in the comments if you want more information. Well, today's guest is a beautiful woman who I only recently started to get to know. I first heard her speak on a stage at Warrior Women Conference, and I also had the privilege of being a judge when she was speaking in a competition. And when I tell you that she blew me away, she blew me away. And once I heard her story, I knew I had to have her right here with us so that she can share some tips and tools about how she got through her journey and things that you guys can do to implement in your lives. Let me tell you a little bit about my next guest, Lori Murphy. She is an empowering coach for women, host of SHEThrives influential women podcast. She's an award-winning published author and a public speaker. Empowering women is my passion. In 2011, I faced alcoholism head-on and chose a path of recovery and renewal, transforming both physically and emotionally. Here's a big one. Losing 150 pounds, I replaced old habits with healthier choices in nutrition, fitness, and mindfulness. Now, as a certified holistic health and transformational life coach, trained at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and the Transformation Academy, I empower women to overcome self-doubt, negative self-talk, and feeling stuck. And I think we've all been there. We all know what that feels like. My journey has fueled my mission to turn personal challenges into tools for resilience and joy in others. Let us welcome Lori to the show. Hello, hello, beautiful.
Hey, Marilyn. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
What a powerful story, though, right? And I know I want to get to a couple of those things. For
Sure.
me, losing 150 pounds. And how'd you get that done, right? But I know that your story is much more powerful than just a weight loss journey, right? In
Mhm.
2011, something happened to you that made you say, enough is enough. I've got to make a change. So share with my viewers your story.
So in 2011, November of 2011, I hit my last and final rock bottom with alcoholism. Um, and I'm going to rewind quite a bit just to kind of paint the picture of what was going on with me, that alcoholism had consumed everything. So back when I was a child, I grew up in a home. I was number 3 of 4 kids, so there was a family of 6. And you know, I for a lot of for a good chunk of my life, I always felt like, even as a small child, that I just didn't belong. I felt different than everybody. I felt like I was kind of outcasted.
Hmm.
As a child, I'd go to school. I had no friends. I pretty much played alone on the playground, and I was bullied a lot. And
Hmm.
then, fast forward to my teens, I was probably about 12 years old when my parents' marriage started to fall apart. And the family life that, and the family that I thought was happy, like, we used to do all these fun things together on the weekends. We were very involved and all the things. And then all of a sudden, just like with the blink of an eye, everything changed. Everything changed. And my parents aren't getting along. My mother is, you know, she's struggling with her own things. So she wasn't as present as I would have liked her to have been.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of dysfunction. There was a lot of chaos, and there was a lot of toxic things going on. Later on down the path, my older sister and my mom started to fight pretty heavy. A lot of the times it was verbal, but there were times where it did get physical.
Yeah.
Um, and I witnessed a lot of that, which just was incredibly traumatic because I would just freeze up because I wouldn't know how to stop it or know what to do. And then it was like turning around and we would just act like nothing ever happened. And that kind of was just how I went through life for a long time, where it was just like something traumatic would happen. Um, and I would just pretend it never happened. I'd just go
Mm.
living my life normal and just stuff it down, stuff it down. So, there was the family life, there was things going on outside the home. I was turning to, poor decisions and bad behaviors. And one night I snuck out with my older sister and we went out with a few of her friends. And I was sexually assaulted by two of those gentlemen,
Mm.
or I can't even say gentlemen. That's not even what I can call them, but
Right.
I have forgiven them at this point. So I just don't know what to call them. They're just guys, right? They were a few years older than me. Um, and I believe that I was drugged, because it was one of those things where it was like I didn't know what was happening until I woke up and it was happening, and then I blacked back out, and it was just like
Right.
bits and pieces. And it was just like I remember just stuffing it down, pretending it never happened, and going about my day, because a part of me felt shame, a part of me was confused and didn't understand what had happened. It was like I did, but I didn't, because I was
Right.
probably about 16 years old. And I just was like, well, maybe I did something to deserve that. And I just
Mm.
didn't know what it was. Um, and I just kind of kept going through life. And, there was other instances where, I was violated in many ways, and mistreated and abused and all the things outside the home. And it was just this constant, like every time I turned a corner, another trauma was happening. And I was just kept slipping further and further down a dark path. And eventually I found my way to alcoholism and substance abuse, self harm, eating disorders. And it was just, I was constantly trying to either numb something and not feel something, because I was in constant state of fear
Mm.
and in pain, or I was trying to grasp control because I had none over anything that was going on in my life. Uh, Eventually, there was a period when I was about 19 where I did stop drinking, stop doing drugs, and tried to get on a better path. I started a career in dentistry, and I met a nice guy and started to have a nice, I thought I was going in a better direction, but I never
Right.
did any of the inner work to address the pain inside. So while I was trying to live a happy, healthy life, I was in excruciating pain. And I just I did not feel loved. I did not feel like I was lovable. I did not feel like I was worthy or good enough. And I believe I was constantly pushing my partner away, because we would break up and he'd go date someone else, and then we'd end up back together. And, it was like a couple times that
Yeah.
happened. And then we finally ended up in a relationship that was solid. And this love went on for 8 years, but I kept burying and suppressing, and I kept trying to get this person to see me and love me, because I felt like if he loved me, then I made it. Then I was worth
Mm.
it, because if he can love me, then I'm not that bad. I must be okay. And I lost myself trying to be somebody that I wasn't, but I didn't know that, because I didn't know who I was. There was this total confusion. And then
Right.
I eventually found my way back to alcohol, and I'll never forget the night that it took its hold on me. I went to a party that I was invited to. I really didn't want to go. Um,
Mhm.
I was bartending part time, and I got invited to a party with a bunch of the bartenders. And my boyfriend's like, "You don't go out and do anything. You kind of live like an old lady. Why don't you go and have some fun?" Okay. And got completely intoxicated and became the life of the party. And I felt I'll never forget taking that shot of tequila when I walked in the door and it was handed to me, because all of a sudden it was like euphoria. It
Mm.
was like this something came over me that was powerful. And I was like, I have arrived. And it took its hold on me. It took a grip on me, and it took away my pain. It made me brave. It took away my fear. I was confident, and I just constantly chased it after that point. And I loved the fact that I didn't feel any pain.
That's
So
your
need
first time drinking tequila?
no tequila. Yes, I think that was the first time I actually had tequila.
Right, because it made you feel different. So if it was the first time, you had never had it before. Then a lot
Right.
that's considered
I was
self-medicated.
usually just drank beer and some, and vodka or something like
Okay.
that, or whatever when you're a kid.
We are
But that
not
was
advocating tequila, guys. So
no,
let's
we are
continue.
not. No. What we're saying is like, yeah, so it just had this effect on me that I never realized. So it just kind of was like off to the races. And while I was thinking that I had arrived and I was now living this awesome life, I was destroying everything. My career that I worked really hard to
Oh my
build
God.
up. I've,
Yeah.
gotten to a very pristine and very well known orthodontic practice here in the area. Um, you know, I had this, I was doing very well, but when the alcohol started to really take its hold on me, my attitude was horrible. I was showing up to work a mess. Um, I was not reliable. Basically, I was a liability. I had destroyed my relationship. Nobody wanted to hang around with me by the time I was done. Like by the time I hit about 28 years old, I pretty much was, you know, I was single, living on my own, and I only had a few people that I surrounded myself with because only I think one person would actually hang out with me at that
Mm.
point. My family had had enough of me, and I was lying to everybody, trying to tell them that I was doing better. Um, 2011 was when things started to really fall apart. And that was when I really started to lie to my family because they were really concerned, wanting to have. I found out they were organizing an intervention, and I lost my shit. Like, y-
Literally.
yeah,
Right.
that did not go over well with me. Um, like I said, making extremely poor, unsafe choices, and
And before we move on to the turn, I have a couple questions about what led to this, right? First of all, I'm so sorry for all these things that have happened to you,
oh, thank
right?
you.
It hit me when you talked about being a child and feeling like an outsider, like an outcast. And being bullied, right? Were there things about you that you can now identify looking back at that little girl,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you think you were born with?
Yes.
Or so
The
was it an
alcoholism?
extreme shyness?
Now, do I think that what part that I was born with
The
exactly?
you know the feeling of being different.
That was something that I was born with. Because
Okay.
I can't remember a period in my life when I was that young where I didn't feel that way.
And now you're the third of four siblings, and I that stood out to me too because I'm the third of four as well, right? So did your siblings have anything to do with that? Because mine did. So your
Oh
siblings
yeah,
had something to do with that
oh
too,
yeah.
right? I think our placement in the order, the pecking order.
Yes, yes. I mean, I love them dearly. I mean, we were kids, but yeah, I think that I mean, and we would have our fights and we would have our things, you know what I mean? And my older sister and I were, you know, one minute we were BFFs, the next minute she's cutting my hair off while I'm taking a nap. Like,
And like,
yeah.
so are these two older sisters or an older brother and
So I
sister
have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister.
and a younger sister? So these two are usually your first friends, right?
Yeah.
Your siblings are your first friends,
Yeah.
right? So if
Mhm.
in that environment there's a feeling of I'm a little bit different than
Yes.
they are, right?
Yes.
That
Yes.
sometimes then translate into when you finally hit school and you're trying to interact with other children, right?
Hmm.
And your expectation. And I'm only bringing this up because I want people to start thinking about when you're having children. I think it's really important for people who are becoming parents now to keep an eye on that, right?
Yeah.
To keep an eye on the interaction with the children when you have multiple children, because it
Mhm.
sometimes does translate into the expectation of the children when they go out and meet other children,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And how they
Yep.
view themselves, how they view everybody
Oh yeah.
then,
I mean,
because it seems like you were scared almost,
I
right?
was. I feel
And
like I
that
was
fear had
definitely.
and it's like other kids can sense fear, So
Mm-hmm.
then picking on you.
Yes. And
Okay.
it's like, my older siblings were athletic and like, they were involved in sports and I kept getting put in sports along with them, but I wasn't interested.
You're
So
not an
while my
athlete.
sister and my brother are thriving in baseball, I'm out in the outfield throwing grass in the air because that was just more fun to me.
That's right. That's right.
Like the
Look at
ball's
this.
flying and I'm
And
just like,
and they're going, look at
magic.
it. I love that. There's always that one kid out there that doesn't catch them all.
Oh yeah, I was the kid that, during choir, during school concerts, one time we were doing a sock hop and we had to stand there all prim and proper on the bleachers and I'm dancing around in circles giving bunny ears to the kids in front of me. Like that was me. Like
So you were different.
I
You
was
were
different.
different
I
and
was different.
misunderstood.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a perfect
But
way of putting it.
yeah, and you were very sensitive. So all these things just show that you had an extra sensitivity, right? You're probably
Yes.
empathic and can feel others' emotions. And the
100%.
children that are like that become adults that are like that and get themselves involved in a lot of these. And I find that those that drink and substance abuse are people that feel too much
Yes.
and don't know what to do with all these emotions. And
100%.
so
Yeah.
they self-medicate
Hmm.
because these things don't allow you to feel everything that you're feeling.
Oh yeah. That is that
And
is
then you
that
feel more
is the
normal.
yep, that is the definition of me right there.
That's
Yep.
you. That's you,
Yep.
girlfriend. Okay. So we've got you. Now we're
Good.
in 2011. You've experienced all these things. It's hitting you in a different way, right?
Yes. Yes.
Intervention's about to happen.
Yes, and until I blew up and, I got very angry and said a lot of hurtful things. But
Yeah.
and
So
I
I guess
left.
it didn't happen.
It did not. It did not.
Didn't
That
need
I
to.
think that was when they were just like, there's nothing we can do. She's just got to go. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't completely cut off, but there was a big distance that was put, between, there was a distance from me, and rightfully so. And it took me a long time to understand that. And I can, so now we're going to fast forward to July of 2011 or 2011. And it's the week of 4th of July. And I think it was July 2nd. I went out with my sister, a friend of mine, and a couple of my sister's friends. We went bar hopping, and I was going through a heartache, and I really, really I fell for somebody who did not live in the country. They lived
Mm.
in across the country in Ireland, and they were here when it happened, and then they left, and I was just left. Like, I still stayed in contact with this person, and we still, he was planning on moving back here and all the things, but I knew he wasn't, and I was going through a really, my feelings were just,
Because
I
you
was just,
feel deeply. People
yes.
like you feel deeply.
Yes, and as I'm standing there with my friend outside of a bar smoking a cigarette, and, I'm taking shots of whiskey, chasing it back with beer, shot beer, smoke, you know what I mean? As I'm
Yeah.
talking about this thing, just because I didn't want to feel it, and then next thing you know, I am, at another bar and threatening to punch my sister in the face for no reason. I went from being all jolly and happy
Mhm.
to very aggressive, and I
Mhm.
got put in a cab with my friend and we got sent back to my apartment, and in the cab I completely passed out. The cab driver and my friend got me into my apartment, and from there I pretty much ended up getting out of bed to go to the bathroom to get sick, and I fell. So when I got
Mhm.
myself back up, I got into the bathroom and I fell again and smashed my head between my tub and my toilet and completely was out cold. So my friend called 911. I guess my breathing was very labored and my BAC was through the roof, and I could have died. If my
Wow.
friend did not get me to the hospital, I would have died. If she
Yes.
was not with me, I would have died. Whether from just laying there passed out after bashing my head or from, you know,
Alcohol
vomiting and
poisoning.
yes,
Mhm.
alcohol poisoning. And So she got me to the hospital, and the next day, I just remember being, and now here I am the next day after a near-death experience, not even phased by it, just trying to get back out drinking again because I'm a champion. I'm a pro. Like, don't you know who I am? I need to be out there at the bars showing everybody up because, no one can drink like me. And I was pissed because I couldn't get out there.
Mm,
The next day, I finally got out and went to a family party and got obliterated all over again. And it was just this vicious cycle.
mm,
August came, and my mother had to pick me up from a very unsafe situation while I was intoxicated. And the next day after that, she had a conversation with me about needing to stop. And that was the first time I ever broke down in tears and admitted that I couldn't, that I did not know how to stop. And I didn't think I could. Um,
Did
I
you have a
had
physical dependency to the alcohol?
yeah,
Was there physical symptoms? Okay.
yeah. So I did try to stop at that point, but it was unsuccessful. And I was right back to doing it all over again in about a week or two. I did go to an AA meeting, and I was just like, no, I don't belong
You just
here.
needed extra help.
So I was like, I just need to calm down. I need to just stop drinking whiskey and just stick to beer, and I'll be fine.
Mhm.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. It didn't
Didn't
work.
work.
It just got progressively worse. Next thing you know, I'm making an embarrassment. My cousin passed away. He had pancreatic and liver cancer, and he passed away. And he was, big, jolly, like redneck Irish man, like big time, we loved to drink together. He loved to party, but he was also a like kind-hearted, like well put together
Yeah.
man. Like he was just fun. So for his services, instead of having after the funeral, instead of having just like a basic gathering afterwards, they had a party and
Mm.
a big memorial party for him. And
Mhm.
I ended up getting smashed, making an embarrassment in front of my family, and that was probably like I was almost at that point of being that was a bottom for me, but it still wasn't enough.
Right.
And then a few weeks later, November of 2011, I decided that this was not the first time and the only time that I ever made this decision, but I did get behind the wheel when I should not have. I was I was intoxicated. Thank God I did not have an accident and I did not hurt anybody, but I got pulled over, and the officer handcuffed me, read me my rights, and arrested me, rightfully so. And
Mhm.
I just remember sitting in the back of that police car, and it was like I had this I could see my cousin and my family members, my favorite women, my
Yeah.
grandmother and my aunts. They're all sitting around the table, and he's like, "This is what's going to stop her. I know it. This." And it was like all of a sudden, it was like I could see them looking over me, like they were watching, like they were trying to find whatever they could to get me to stop, and that was it. Something just
Mm.
lifted inside me, and I said, "I can't do this anymore. I've become everything I said I'd never become and everything that I hated, and I didn't wanna do it anymore." And that was the last night I ever drank, and that was November 12th of 2011. And then I started my
Wow.
journey in recovery.
Wow. You truly had to hit rock bottom.
I didn't wanna know another way of rock bottom at that point because
Yeah,
I'm
there could
now
have been more. It could have been
it could have
yeah,
gotten
it
so much
could have
worse.
been.
I'm like, if I don't stop what I'm doing, I am gonna hurt somebody. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm either going to I am gonna hurt somebody, not just myself, and, like, all I could think about was who I could have hurt. And when I
Mm.
went to that, drug and alcohol, or they do the panels when you get arrested, they do the alcohol panels, drinking, driving, and
Mhm.
I remember I don't know if I was the only person in that room that really paid attention, but I sat there in the very front row and I listened to every single story and I bawled my eyes out because I knew that I did, it was listening to the mother talk about losing her son to a drunk driver who blew the same BAC I did. And I'm just sitting there
So
listening to
what
these.
room was this?
This was a
Was
they
it a class that you were mandated to take?
It was actually like in like a gymnasium, I think, where they do mandate you to go to class, but then they have a panel where they have speakers come and they stand on stage. So one of them is a person who used to drink, like a person in recovery who had gotten in
Mhm.
trouble. Another person was somebody who lost somebody they loved to drunk driving.
Mhm.
And there were like two other people. I think one of them was a police officer, and I can't remember what the fourth one was, but they all had these impactful stories and how drinking and driving affected their lives.
Mhm.
And I just remember sitting there bawling my eyes out, being like, I don't ever want to hurt these people. And I don't ever want to be the person that takes away the woman's son driving home
Right.
to get home to his
Right.
kids. Like, I never want to do that. Never. And that was it for me. Like, the acknowledgement of what could happen if I continue, and just acknowledging where my life had come to,
Right.
was not a life that I wanted to live.
Now tell me, from going to that to becoming an empowerment coach, right? That's, not everybody that goes through something like that. Some people become speakers, some people, tell their story, but you're going beyond just telling your story. You want to transform women's lives, right?
Yes.
So when did that come into your life where you decided, not only am I going to tell this story, but I'm going to do something with this story and I'm going to help people and women specifically? How did that happen?
Well, it definitely took a few years, like quite a few years. So when I gave up drinking, I replaced drinking with food. So I went from being like
Okay.
165 pounds to almost 300 in probably less than a year, like
Wow.
about a year and a
I
half.
can't even imagine you at that weight because I
And
know you now. So
yeah, it was, I just, I smoked like a fiend. I had very unhealthy coping skills. I still didn't know how to cope with my feelings. I didn't know how to handle stress.
so that was my
Um,
next question. Did you ever get assistance, mental health assistance, in order to learn the tools that you didn't have? You weren't born with tools, right? Of resiliency.
Oh, so yeah, so I definitely did. So I am a big fan of therapy. So when I got sober, so I got arrested on a Saturday. Sunday, I'm meeting with my lawyer. Monday, I'm
Mhm.
at a therapist to get a drug and alcohol evaluation for my
Mhm.
DWI. And I was just like, do you take insurance? And he's like, I do. And I'm like, is this all you do? Or are you an actual therapist? So I'm an actual therapist. I go, can I schedule my next appointment? Because I need
Mhm.
you. And
Mhm.
then on Tuesday, I'm at my first AA meeting. So I got the therapist before I went to AA, but it was all within that same 4 days. And I stayed with them for a few years. Like, I've had a few different therapists over the course of the last 13 years because I've gone for
Okay.
different needs.
Right.
But periodic breaks here and there, but I still manage to, I still go. I have a great therapist now. So I
I
really
like
had
that
to, huh?
because healing, I say this all the time, healing is continuous,
It's always,
right?
it
You
doesn't,
don't wake up one day and say, I'm good, I'm done. I don't
it doesn't,
I don't need anything anymore.
and this is the
That's
way
BS.
yeah, and this is the way I describe it is I call it the onion effect. So you have an onion and you peel back a layer, and that layer is that first thing that comes up that you've suppressed for so long. And then
Right.
as you heal that, you peel back another layer and another thing comes up. And sometimes it comes up very softly and it just kind of like, oh, okay, this is something else I need to work on. Or other times it's like a punch in the gut, like you lose your breath, like what just happened.
Right.
So needless to say, and I'll get to like my experience with that really quick here. So now I replaced alcohol with food, but I'm on this journey of healing. So I'm going to therapy. I'm working on more or less the alcohol at this point, the
Okay.
depression and the anxiety stuff, and trying to manage that. At this point, I did get into a relationship when I was still young in recovery that lasted 5 years. And I had, in that 5 years, spent most of that 5 years. Yes, I was going to meetings, working on my recovery, working a 12-step program, but I really didn't know myself. I really just kind of like made my life with him and his children, or he had older children that had their own kids, and I made their family my life. And when that relationship ended, I didn't know who I was
Mm.
because I never took the time to really look at who I am, learn who I was as a sober person, what made me happy. I knew nothing. And I realized that when somebody asked me, what is something that you like to do for fun? And I just was like, I like to mini golf. And I'm like, I don't even mini golf. Like, why did I even say that? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, why did
Right.
I say that? Because I went once or twice. So it was just kind of like I really needed to learn these parts of me. And so I'm on this journey of self-discovery, learning who I am, discovering that I'm an artist and I can paint, and learning that I love to hike and I love to do this and all these things. Like, I'm learning all this stuff about myself. And then, I started my weight loss journey when I quit smoking. I decided I don't want to smoke anymore because I can't breathe. I'm 34 years old. And at this point, I'm living in my mother's basement because I was
Mm,
financially not. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I'm still doing all
right.
this stuff, living at home. So I quit smoking and I went back to the gym and realized that the way I felt after I worked out was so much better than driving around in my car chain smoking cigarettes. And
Right.
then I started replacing baked goods with, fruit. And instead of drinking a big 23-ounce thing of soda, I'm drinking water. And I started just gradually replacing things and weaning out bad food and replacing it with nutritious food. So, um, from there, now I'm losing weight and I'm doing well. And then fast forward to, I think it was 2018, I was sitting with a group of women talking about the Me Too movement, and they were talking about their stories. And all of a sudden, I flashed back to that 16-year-old girl in
Right.
that hotel room with those two guys. And I, for the first time, actually shared my story because
Right.
I remembered it for the first time, what I could. And they just kind of looked at me with they were just like wanting to cry. And I was like, you want to know what's funny? And they're like, what? And I'm like, I just remembered that. And I go, I haven't thought about that in 20 years. And they were like, wow. They're like, you were in the right place. But what had ended up happening was now I can't shake it. Like, that was
Mhm.
the punch in the gut, the like I couldn't
Right. So that
breathe.
comes to the surface and now you're having difficulty with that.
It came, and it did not go away. It turned out to be me sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, because now I'm living alone, and sitting in a dark apartment with my front door locked and on my couch and I'm under a blanket going, I hope he doesn't find me. I hope he doesn't find me. And I'm like, this dude doesn't even know who I am. Like, he hasn't thought about me in 20 years. Like, that was a one
Right.
night thing for him. Like, he's done it over, and whatever his life has gone to is great. But
Right.
I'm like, this isn't realistic and this isn't good. So I reached out and got some information on um, county services for trauma survivors, crime victims and trauma survivors. And I got the right help and got the right therapy. I did EMDR and, worked through it. And I
For
can't
those
sit
that
there.
don't know what that is, what is an MDR?
So EMDR is a type of therapy that they use to help heal from traumatic experiences. So I can tell you
Okay.
how my therapist walked me through it. So basically, it's almost like a guided meditation in essence.
Okay.
So we worked up to getting prepared. We didn't just jump right into it. Like, we had to set up like a mental safe space for me to go to, so that when I am under this meditative state, revisiting this, I have a safe place to go. And I have a safe person that's going to be there for when I need to. And this is all like internal and mental. So, my Aunt Linda, who is right here, she was my best friend and she was my safe person. And I had my safe space. And so when we finally got that ready, we went into the meditation. I say it's meditative. It's more or less, she kind of like puts me, like guides me through
Mhm.
this, step by step of what happened, what I remember. And when it got to be too intense, she took me to the safe space where my aunt would be there. And I would envision my aunt
Wow.
rubbing my back and calming me down. And then when I was ready for the next time, then we'd go back into it.
Gotcha.
And
That's great. So with all of this, now we're fast forwarding to now you making the decision. So when do you make the decision that now I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna make this my life's work?
2019, I started a
Okay.
Facebook group. So I
Okay.
told you it took a few years. 2019, I had a Facebook group that I was running. It was a private
Uh-huh.
Facebook group. I called it Real Talk Live with Lori Dowling. That's my maiden name.
Okay.
And I would go live and I would talk about motivation and inspiration. I would talk about my story, and I was starting to bring on guests and all the things. And I remember I was in my living room and I got off one of my lives. And all of a sudden I went, oh my God, I'm a coach. I'm a coach. Like I just heard it. It was like loud and clear. It was my calling. It was, this is what you got to be. This is what I made you for.
Yeah.
This was God saying, this is what I made you for. And that, from that moment on, and I was so happy. I mean, I'm jumping up and down and I'm like, yes, this is
Yeah.
it. And ever since then, you know, I started kind of I was playing around with some life coaching programs that I didn't feel fit what I wanted for myself. And then in 2021, my mentor and good friend, Margaret Reinold, she introduced me to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And that was really what got me going. About 6 months into that program, I started taking clients and I haven't
And
stopped
here
since.
you are. And here you are.
And here I
Now,
am.
so, and this is years in the making. So guys, the story, the struggle is now leading to the ability to share those same tools, right?
Mhm.
That you needed to heal. And now you can give that forward. So you're
Mhm.
paying this forward, you're paying the healing forward. How can people get a hold of you if they
So
want to participate?
Well, I always guide people to my Facebook page. That I do a lot with Facebook. There's a lot of content on there. And you can find me at Lori A. Murphy, Empowerment Coach for Women. Or you can even email me at M as in Michael C empowerment@gmail.com. You can always shoot me an email and we can set up a call. And I'd love to be able to talk with you and, see if I can be of help in your journey in some, to some capacity.
That's fantastic. And I see a book behind you. Tell me what
Born-
that is.
This is Born to Risk. And this is an anthology, which Marilyn, if I'm not mistaken, you're a part of this too.
I have a chapter in that book too.
Yes. So this book is incredible. So this is 50 other co-authors, including Marilyn and myself. And this book has stories of how people have taken a huge risk and turned it into their greatest reward. And my story about how I made the choice of getting sober and starting my journey in recovery had led me to this point. And, how that became, I was terrified when I was 29 years old, making that choice. And now
Right.
here I am. And it was my greatest reward because now I get to help people. I get to take my mess, use it as my message, and help others. And there are 49 other authors in that book who have their own stories where they get to share and help others and save people from 5 years of suffering.
That's right. And this book is about to launch. It's there, it's written. We have our copies. So we were going to be putting this on in the comments if you want to get a hold of one of these copies of these books, because you can't find it on Amazon. You're not
No,
going to
you
find it
cannot.
there. You got to
Mm-mm.
get it from one of us. So we will let you know how to get that book in the comments section. Okay, so if
Absolutely.
there's one thing that you could share with the viewers, right? You've had this long, long journey, right? Your
Mhm.
entire life you've been on a journey. If
Mhm.
there's one thing that you could pick out, if somebody's struggling and going through something similar or something difficult, what's one thing they can do today to start moving in the right direction?
The one thing I would say is it takes courage to make a choice, to make a change. And it's finding that courage to make one choice. And when you make that one choice, set one small goal that you can sustain in that day, even if it's just getting up out of bed and going for a walk rather than going and sitting on the couch, that is stepping forward in the right direction to get toward your goal.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, take one step, just one. And that's all you need to do that day.
Yeah.
The next day, take two. Right?
Yeah.
If you
and
can.
don't run.
If you can.
Yeah, and don't run because that's when you
Yeah,
trip
don't
and
run.
fall.
Absolutely.
Just
Just walk.
unless
Just walk.
if you're like me, you're gonna trip and you're gonna land on your face. So just don't run. Walk.
That's fantastic. Now, Lori, this is the last question that I ask all my guests. And that is, can you share with us what your definition of success is?
My definition of success is not contingent on your bank account and the riches that you may find in this world. Success is when we make that choice to make those small goals and to move forward. When we make those choices and we take the action each day, and we're brave enough to move through that fear, when you're overcoming your greatest obstacle, that's success. If you're overcoming an addiction and you have, even if it's just 5 days, that's 5 days off of the drugs and the alcohol. That's success.
That's right.
It's
Amen.
internal.
Amen. Success is internal. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And for my guests, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.